All right, and we are back with our first conversation for the morning, and we have joining us live in studio none other than the Honorable Patrick Faber. He's a member of Parliament and a representative for the Collet Division. Good morning, Mr.
Good
Faber.
morning.
Good morning to you both, and it's good to be here on the set of OIE once again.
It's been a while since we've had you here, right?
Been a while
Back in
indeed.
your skinny days. It's good to have you. I'm glad that you are open and willing to come and sit down with us and to have these important conversations. And best believe we'll make most of the time. I think we could start with the budget. That's where, being one of the more recent occurrences, I know that you spoke on the third day, the last day of the budget presentation, a 3-day historic 3-day in that it had never happened before for the budget presentation for 3 days, and your presentation went on for quite a bit of time. In fact, it was almost 2 hours that you spent on the budget. I don't know if you intended initially to speak that long, but let's talk about some of the main points that you wanted viewers, general public, Parliament to consider from your budget presentation.
Well, before I go there, let me say that I am happy once again to be on the set of OIE, and I'm happy to be home. Yes, indeed, we participated in the budget debate held last week. And I want to say that while you mentioned it's historic that it happened for 3 days, I'm not sure it is the longest budget debate that has ever been had. I remember in my first time in opposition, for example, the debates used to go through the nights.
Yeah, till
so,
about 12.
certainly in the days of Mr. Esquivel, sometimes it would run 2, 3 in the morning because it would be one day and it would go on and on and on. We've had some marathon House debates before.
Indeed.
But I think the way that it has been set up this time around by Prime Minister Briceño allows for people to be comfortable. You don't have to, it allows everybody to get a good time in the day when the citizenry is awake. I feel that that is a good idea because, you know, while we are in that house and we share and we speak on behalf of our constituencies to each other, we also speak to the wider population. And so that's very, very important for them to be able to hear. And I take this opportunity to thank our media sources who help to get the message out once it is delivered in the House.
Yeah. So I hear you congratulating the Briceño administration.
Absolutely,
then.
man. Paul, if you listen to what I was saying in my presentation, and I had no idea that it would go on for, you say 2 hours. You know,
Almost 2 hours,
almost
sir.
2 hours.
Hour and
It's more
45
than the
minutes.
LO.
There are some things that you put down, but this is just the point. It is not something that should be scripted.
Yeah.
This is a debate. I listen to other members using the standing orders to ask the speaker for permission to read, to reflect. That's what the standing order says. To look at your notes, to use your notes from time to time, but people read from a script, and that keeps you very well within the time limit. So that's a good side to that, but it is not what the standing order says. A debate should be based on what the previous speakers said about issues, and you communicate like that, you know. So it's very hard if you're really doing what you ought to be doing to keep it within the script. And as you go along, you come up with new things to say. But I use a general script to guide, and then I interject things that I feel the Belizean people would like to know. And I also try to keep it very, very lively. In terms of my presentation, and you are right. Sorry, I was saying that we have to give credit where credit is due. We have to give, that's the best way to build the kind of camaraderie that's needed in order for us to get together, in order for us to make things work for the Belizean people. So I believe in calling a spade a spade. if there are good things, and maybe I should begin there are good things that were in that budget. And there are good things that were in the budget, you may say, also because much of what is in the budget came from the UDP. That's a point that I was making, and very little credit was given. In fact, I said that while it is very commonplace for new administrations to take credit for things that the last administration did, this PUP government really ran away with that to a whole new level. But there were good things in the budget. I remember reading in the Prime Minister's speech, for instance, that there is a move now to get the unions on board. In fact, he indicated that it's already happening, to ensure that we have a contributory pension scheme for public officers. That is something that is a tremendous burden on the public purse.
Yeah.
And it's not fair that taxpayers in general bear that burden. And it is something, by the way, which the union has never rejected it. At least in my time as Minister of Education, they have always said, we are prepared to sit down and to talk about this, but it has to be in the context of everything else, the wider picture. And we've never really gotten there because we bicker too much about other things. But that to me is a very, very good move. The move to give back the public servants their increments, I think, is a very good move. We could argue about how we got there and that it should not have been taken away in the first place and all of that. But ultimately, it is a good thing that our public servants have gotten back those increments. It is a good thing that we're spending what we're spending in education. It could be worse. It could have been cut. There are things that we could say in terms of where spending ought to have been increased. I believe more should be spent on education, regardless of what I said just now. I believe that more should be spent on our young people. I believe that more should be spent on making resilient infrastructure for this country, and we see a lot of that happening now. But still, because we keep on spending over and over on some of the same things when we don't build climate resilient infrastructure, I believe that the tax structure could have been touched a bit. The Prime Minister, for instance, spoke about an excess collection of taxes. And people look at that and say, especially in the Ministry of Finance, and say, wow, this is a good thing. But if you are a part of the Belizean population out here feeling the pinch every day, when you go to that gas station and you have to pay those high prices, and some of that is taxes, you have to wonder what is going on. Why is it that you can boast about excessive collection of taxes over the amount that you anticipated, and people are punishing? And then, of course, there are things like the poverty statistics, which I pointed out was very disingenuous on the part of the government for them to make that claim. For instance, I watched, and I commend this show again for trying always to be at the heart of matters, that you hosted the SIB folks here. And I believe a representative from the UNDP, was it, that joined you on the... on the
multidimensional poverty index.
Right. So there is this new way of calculating poverty.
Yes.
And that is all fine and well, but to jump on that and to say because they've used a new way and the level of poverty using that new calculation has gone down tremendously, to jump up and then to boast, wow, see, it's because of the policies of my government, land and education and housing are the main pillars of those
but
actions.
Isn't that what politics is?
Yes, it is. And I gave that point. I made that point that yes, sometimes but it is disingenuous. And what we need in this country is to be honest with each other, to really look at the issues. You see, because if we convince ourselves and we convince the population that everything is okay when everything is not okay, then we won't be able to fix the problems. And so they always say to you, well, the first step in fixing something that's wrong is to recognize what the problem is. And if you sugarcoat or cover up or whitewash, or in this case blue wash, as I often term it, then there is no hope of understanding what the real issues are.
Let's delve a bit deeper into the budget for the Ministry of Education. One, it's the main portfolio you held under the previous administration, and two, it's the second largest amount of funds earmarked for this year's budget, right behind the Ministry of Finance.
They have to pay the bills. That's the only reason why it's bigger.
Well, I don't want to make it political, but to try to make any comparisons. But I mean, this administration has only been in office for 2 years, 2 years and a half, there about several months. But if you were to, I don't know, stock up your performance to that of this current minister, how would you compare?
Well, my criticism about what the Ministry of Education does or is proposing to do in this new financial year, or even moving beyond, is not so much that the things are bad, And that's one of the things I was careful to do when I became Minister of Education, not to criticize and tear down and throw away the things that were working. And in this instance, of course, I don't know if you remember that the Honorable Francis Fonseca was my predecessor in the Ministry of Education. So he came before me and came after. And there were things that he implemented while he was minister that were good. And I never ceased to give credit where credit is due in that respect. For instance, early childhood education. We found a system where they were trying to attach preschools onto primary schools. Preschool and early childhood education in Belize is not mandatory, and so the government doesn't necessarily pay for it. But there was a move to attach these preschools to primary schools so that the government would be able to give greater assistance and more children would go. That's a good move. There was a move to decentralize teacher education under Francis Fonseca, move it from a teacher's college scenario where everybody had to come to Belize City, to move it to junior colleges across the country. Problem is our junior colleges probably were not equipped to do that kind of thing. So we took that and we ran with that. We made sure that the teacher trainers were trained in those teacher training institutions, which is the junior colleges. And we tried to run with the same ideas. So where it is that there is continuity, there is no problem. The problem is that there is continuity and then this administration comes down like it's a novel idea. This is something brand new. You look at Connect Ed, BTL or DigiGiving bandwidth to schools.
You're saying that was something you
This is not something
piloted
new.
under administration?
Yes, in fact, we under my watch, the ministry actually engaged in something called, I can't remember the name of the project now, but we actually gave devices and bandwidth to the schools. There was a pilot project with at least 10 schools, and the idea was for us to continue that. It became very expensive during the time of COVID. In fact, we switched a bit and we started giving out the phablets instead, which were more economical. And all of that has not been continued.
So what I'm trying to gather here is that well, most of your speech was based on this is continuity and innovation, right? In the aspect of you just want to ensure that this particular administration provides the credit that these ideas were under your administration at first.
And the reason for that is that it builds the credibility of the government and it builds the opportunities for us to work together. If I can't trust you, then we can't work together.
So now that we have this budget rollout, it's been approved. These are the changes that are going to happen.
Well, it's going to go to the Senate.
It's going to go to the
Yes.
Senate
This Wednesday.
this Wednesday. No. And I want to ask you, because I had asked this question to LO as well, and you're saying that you would have prioritized more into education. What would have a budget development looked like for Honorable Patrick Faber?
Well, we would have done what is being done now in terms of giving back the increments, but because that is something that the UDP did even before leaving office. We insisted on taking those increments, but not cutting salaries or firing people. And that was what the whole hullabaloo, if you will, was about in terms of the $1 million a day borrowing. The UDP decided to borrow internally, borrow from the central bank in order to make sure that public servants were not fired. And that's a point that I made too. That would that they don't give any credit for that action alone. It's looked at as something negative, when in fact it is something that kept this economy stable and is the foundation upon which an administration now can make changes. So putting back those increments in the hands of public officers would certainly have been something that I would have done leading the administration. Investing in our young people. And for anybody who would be quick to say, well, Faber under the UDP, under you were Minister of Youth, I would want you to have been a fly on the wall in the cabinet room whenever I spoke at the times when we had an opportunity to talk about where to spend more money. Because if we sit or we stand or we do whatever every day and we talk about how much the young people are valuable to our development and so on, not only our future but our present, then what is being allotted to our ministries that pertain to our young people? Education being the primary one, and also youth and sports. It's pathetic.
Well, I was going to say, and we'll move on in a few, but I was going to say, after years under your leadership and you're speaking to the lack of financing, you'll forgive my ignorance here, but I don't know that sports and the athletic community is any better off after you demitted office. I don't know that the situation involving our youths is any better off. I know that the PUP administration continues to accuse you of neglecting the TVETs as well. One of the things that they said they implemented, so it's one of those Fonseca implemented schemes or plans that, again, they're saying you neglected. So I don't know that these populations were any better off, and I don't know that, I think they still have complaints at this current moment. So constant administrations, constant leadership failing these youths.
You know, we would need a week work of show time for us to talk about all these issues. But we touched on two of the IT vets in my presentation, responding to the Honorable Zabane, who is the Dangriga representative. The whole concept of the physical infrastructure of these IT vets were a problem. They built Hope Creek, the one in Dangriga in Hope Creek, in a sinkhole. Every time it rains, the machinery gets damaged. The place gets flooded out. The one in Toledo, sorry, was built at Salamanca Camp, which is far removed from the main town. But it is also a stigma about TVET education in this country. We have long perceived it as a kind of area for dropouts from primary school, early school leavers as we call it. And when the government tried to fall in line with what was happening regionally, putting in place the TVETs, which was a concept that was really at a much higher level. When you enter level 1 training at in the IT vet structure, you're really at the latter part of high school, maybe even junior college level. For us, that is really what it ought to have been. So it was hard to raise that level, and then people just saw it as a kind of dumping ground for people who left school early. And that is what really caused the issues there. So there is a lot of work, and we tried. I think the issue is that we couldn't really decide whether we are going to just develop it as something to capture those early school leavers who were leaving, or we would finalize it and keep it at the level of the region where they said they insisted it would need to be.
Let's April, if you'd allow me.
Sure.
We want to take some time to divert a little bit. So
Absolutely.
if you'd allow me to change directions. I know I asked you earlier, but let me ask genuinely how you're doing. How are you doing personally? We know that leading up to the last general elections and even following after that, you hit some rock bottom scenarios in your lifetime, and that accusations were hurled against you. Video evidence were out there in terms of domestic violence situations. Let's talk about your personal intervention. We've discussed it before, but I don't know that we've gotten an update in terms of how you've really been.
Well, yesterday I was at my alma mater primary school, Queen Square Anglican, and I got the most interesting question from one of the children. This was a standard 4 class, and the little boy asked me, I need to go back and find out what is the name of that little boy, because he was very interesting. He asked me, he said, "Sir, have you ever failed in your life?" Because of course at the career day you talk about all your successes. And I really appreciated having that question, because things are not always rosy on the path to your life, and the successes that you enjoy are not always the main the main event in life. And so there are times, yes, in my past, and I'm sure that there are more issues to come. Life is never a dull moment, and certainly in my life there was never a dull moment. And so I have, as you know, I've withdrawn quite a bit from being in the public spotlight. I withdrew from being the leader of my party, and I took some time to focus on me. As you know, I was in therapy. I have not been in therapy since the start of this year, but I continue to utilize the strategies and what I learned while in therapy to ensure that I'm building a better me. And so I do the two things simultaneously. I tell people, yes, that I'm away studying, but that is an ongoing process, trying to build a better me and to ensure that whenever I come back full effect and full time, that it would be a better version of me, so that people can feel comfortable working with me. And I'm sure that that is the case. So while I will not get into details, that's where I'm at. It's an ongoing process. I will not be disingenuous to anybody and have them feel that, well, it's not like that. Those poverty figures that just wipe out 68,000
Well,
automatically.
it's not the SIB that's calculating
Oh, wow.
the data in your life.
I wanted to, gosh, Paul. I wanted to get into the fact that you did say you're studying. You are in pursuit of a PhD. When you are through with your studies, do you have any plans on returning and engaging again in politics?
Absolutely. I don't know where people got the impression that I'm done with politics.
Did you go to school and get a PhD?
I am a member of the House of Representatives, and this year makes it 20 years. I have long been engaged in doing my PhD. In fact, if I tell you how long, you'd be frightened. But I had to really, in fact, to be honest with you, when I checked the records, I had been out of school since 2016.
Wow.
I had done all the coursework, and I was only needing to do my dissertation. And I pleaded with my university to give me an opportunity to do this. It was because I was engaged in the same kind of public life that I'm getting the degree to help me in, that I was, and the university was very gracious. The president, the provost, all said, let's give you that chance to finish. But it allowed me to, as I said, do my own reflection on life and put myself in a better position. I've had these difficulties with my party, as you know, and I believe that is why some people feel that I won't any longer pursue public office, but that's not the case for me. I feel that the people of Collet would never forgive me if I abandon them after all this time that we've been together, and they've been faithful to me. They've not ever said, Faber, we're tired of you, we don't want you. So until they do that, I'm not going anywhere. And I've said to my party, and I'm not trying to rekindle an argument, please. We are at a stage in our party's life that we need to be unified. We need to work together. We need to be strong. And that is what I'm hoping for. We have a National Party Council meeting, of course, coming up over this weekend, where we hope to resolve some very key issues. I'm hoping among that will be the issue of my candidacy in Collet.
I was going to ask, let's talk a bit about that, but specifically where your opponent, well, in-party opponent,
yeah.
that is, the name slips me.
Ian Jones.
Ian Jones.
Ian
yeah.
Jones. Right. So
Name slips me sometimes.
well, that's your good friend, sir. Your mentee. Some may argue. Who do you consider that he basically, as we would say in regular talk, stabbed you in the back
Well,
when he took that position?
Nothing is surprising in politics when you really look at the overall picture. And I will say this because this is my understanding of what the situation is. What happened with Mr. Jones happened because of a larger issue, the larger issue of the inability for the leader, the current leader, and myself to get things right. And so if I was not going to be the candidate, Ian felt that he would be a natural fit. So that is what it is. And so I feel that if we're able to, as a party, and more particularly if we're able to, between he and I, the leader of the party, work things out, then those matters will fall in place. And I am optimistic, I'm hopeful that we're able to work those matters out in very short order. I also feel very strongly about running for my constituency. I am not going to abandon them. So when people say, or people hear me say, that I will run independent, I want people to understand that that would be my absolutely last option. My first love, my first commitment is to the United Democratic Party. I would love nothing greater than to offer myself as a candidate for this party once again. That is genuine. That I don't even, in fact, when I stand up in the House of Representatives, I want to be counted as a UDP.
Sir, but
Do you have any I guess plans to run for party leader again?
Well, not at this time.
Okay.
Not at this time. And I've made that very clear to all the players in my party. When I left the leadership in January of last year, I was very clear about why I was doing so. Nobody forced me to leave. I was not recalled. I was not anything of that nature. I made a decision that I thought would be best for the party and best for myself at the time. I felt that the burden that I was carrying was a heavy load for me, and it was also a very heavy load to put on the backs of the people of the United Democratic Party. And so I decided, I made that call to say, take a little time, work on you, and then you may come back. And that's something that I guess we'll have to wait and see. Certainly while I'm in school and working on my degree, which has taken me long enough, that I will not pursue. And I will certainly not pursue the leadership of the party again until I feel very confident that there is a better version of myself, which I've told you and I've told the nation that I'm working on desperately.
How do you feel right now about the overall morale within the party? And I ask that because there have been a couple of conventions so far that have taken place with a good amount of voters coming out in favor of their favorite UDP candidate. John Saldivar just won in Belmopan a couple of months ago. So how do you feel about the overall morale?
Well, I'm very happy to see the numbers turning out in the convention. I mean, while we have had probably larger conventions in the party over time, given the climate that we're in now, these are very, very good convention numbers. And so I'm very happy to see that. But in terms of the morale of party supporters, it's not very high. And that is because of the fact that the players, the main players, myself included, seem to have tremendous difficulty in uniting and putting forward our best face. And so I'm hoping that, again, we'll be able to fix that and get our house in order in very short order. And it shows that the low morale of the party shows. For instance, when I am in the House of Representatives and I get up and I contribute to the debate, and there are times when I have intentionally not gone, especially right after my issues in early last year. Other times it's because I find it very difficult to put a stop to my studies for the moment and come. Like once the budget debate was announced, I had to make a decision whether I was going to come for the reading of the budget or for,
The debate itself.
so I opted to come for the last 2 days of the debate because I needed to represent the colored people first of all, but I also needed to make representation on behalf of my party. And the response to that was overwhelming. I mean, the party supporters from all over sent messages, made posts, they did everything that they could to show that, hey, we don't care what you want shine issue is. We don't care where you want Saldiva problem is. You don't need to get it together for the sake of the wider UDP, and some will go as far as to say you need to get it together for the sake of the country, because having a good, strong opposition is important to our democracy.
There is this sense of unity right now within the party, but from what we're seeing, and you only get that because there doesn't seem to be that bickering amongst each other
On the
that
media.
was there, at least on the media. So we don't know what's happening in the
Behind
background,
closed
and
doors,
I
yeah.
think maybe you want to give us some insight into
you
the
know,
elements in the background.
the media finds out everything. So if there was bickering, you would have heard about
The
that.
thing is,
You guys have a way of finding out.
the thing is, though, Mr. Faber, the question really is, where do you stand within the party at this point in time? Because it would appear that whenever Mr. Saldivar falls out with you, then there's a fall between you and Mr. Saldivar, then his support goes to Shine. And whenever there's a fallout between he and the leader of the opposition, that his support goes to you, and then all of a sudden arms are wide open, you're let back into the party. We want Faber for Colette, but that was not the song that was being sung a few months ago or last year. How do you feel being what some may label the ping pong ball within the political table of the
very
UDP?
interesting description
Right?
that you put there, Paul. It's very imaginative, I view politics just like anything else, and in fact, if you look at even the family structure and how things work within a family, these are dynamics that happen every day. You have quarrels, you fight with one another, you say negative things about your own people, and then you have to hug up when you're done. Ultimately, you are one family. For me, it is all a part of the game. I really wish that we could get back to the basics, the things that we really, like for instance, the Honorable John Saldiva has always been, I've maintained that for years, a very good friend of mine.
Oh, really?
And even in our most difficult times, I can pick up the phone and call John and say, where you going, brother? And we could talk. Even though, and if you listen to him, you will hear him say the very same thing. We are adversaries because we have clashing ambitions, but we don't hate each other. And sometimes in politics you have to employ tactics that may cause some harm reputationally and so on, because that's sad, but it is true. But ultimately there is not that level of hatred that will stop us ever. And I can say that genuinely about I'll give you another example. I've said some harsh things about the chairman, Mr. Perifit. You know that. And when I came,
harsh things about your leader.
when I came home, absolutely. When I came home on Thursday, Mike was on the same flight with me, and it's not any kind of hard talking and he was also presiding over the convention in Toledo over the weekend, and I was there, and we chatted, so it's never to the point where we can't get over whatever has been said or done. This is politics. It is the kind of game that sometimes gets nasty, but we have to.
So even though there have been allegations that your own party had tried to basically run against you within your party, you still want to be a UDP. You hold no malice. You want to remain in your party.
Absolutely.
Why? What is so important about the UDP's mandate?
Because the party is bigger than all of us.
Okay.
That is ultimately what caused me to say in January of last year, I will walk away from the leadership. This is not about me. You can't, I cannot think that everything should revolve around my candidacy and my leadership of the party and so on. This party has existed before my coming into existence. The party is older than me and it's longer standing, and so it should not be that we feel that if we can't go on, the party can't go on. So I maintain that I'm a UDP. The only way you will get me on that ballot otherwise is if the UDP says it doesn't want me to do so, and I don't think that that's the case.
How settled are you about the notion that the Honorable Moses Shine Barrow will lead your party into the next general elections? I know that among you, he's the least experienced. He may be able, as he said, to finance the party. That's arguable. You may have your position on that. But how comfortable are you with this situation that you found, that the party has now found themselves in?
Well, that's a question that we will deal with on Saturday. I believe that is on our agenda for Saturday. But let me say this without saying too much and going too far, that I believe in the democratic processes of the party. And there are things, in my view, which need to happen before we can rally around a single leader. And those things will require some time. And the reason I'm saying that is that we're in a situation now where there is, while you say it's quiet on the home front, at least from the media's perspective, things are not all, things aren't all settled. And so we need to be able to reach to that point, and that will take some doing. And so I certainly, on my own, I'm not comfortable saying this is a go just yet. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done. But insofar as the party is a democracy, and insofar as they may make a decision, whichever mechanism they use that is right by the constitution of our party, to say, all right, this is the situation. They will have no trouble from me. I have said, and I'm saying it publicly now, if there is a convention this year for leadership, as it is scheduled in our constitution, I will not be a candidate. So I am not going to stand in the way of anybody who aspires to be leader from getting there. But I do want to have a say, and I do want to contribute to making sure that whoever leads this party understands that we need to be fighting fit, we need to be unified, and we need to practice the good practices of governing a party to make us flourish.
As I've gathered, there seems to still be a campaign against Mr. Barrow, from what some assume to be coming from your PR team. We see a couple social media.
PR team?
Sir, you have a PR team. You could deny it. You could deny it here on this show, but we see the ads, and your name is not on it, of course, so we can't say it's you.
You just did. You just did.
Well, it's your PR team, but we still see these ads. So there's this
there are strong,
sentiment.
there's very strong-willed persons who put themselves out there, and somebody like Mr. Curt Kelvin, for instance.
There you go.
People ask me. People say, "Well, Delroy is your guy." So,
Yeah.
and if you think that Delroy can be anybody's guy, then you have a misconception of Delroy, because you can't program Delroy Curt Kelvin. Another man is Mr. Denton Belize, call it Belize's father. You can't program Denton. I could tell the cows come home that, listen, you need to do X, Y, Z, and if they don't feel that that is the right thing to do, I could ask them to do anything under the sun, and they will. If they don't feel that it's the right thing to do, they won't do it. So I can't take the credit, or I can't take the blame for all of these posts or whatever else is out there in the media.
Have you been able to sit down with Mr. Barrow at any point over the last several months to have a discussion?
The leader of the party?
Yes.
Yes.
We
the
have
leader of
had
the party.
discussions on and off, particularly on the 2 days of the budget debate that I was there. You know, we have a little members' room in the back, which, by the way, I need to clear up these things for people. When you see members not sitting physically in the chamber, it's not that you're not there, you know. We have 2 rooms in the back, one for the government and one for the opposition, and there is a monitor, and you can watch all of the speeches and the, you know, so it's not that we're absent when we're not there. So yeah, we sit behind there sometimes and we talk about issues, and so yes, Shannon and I have had some conversations about where we would want to see the party go.
Let me ask one final question now about the absence of one of your parliamentary colleagues, Sister B, Ms. Denise Barrow. She hasn't been to a house meeting. I think I've only seen her once. That tells a tale about accountability within the UDP. Your party leaders certainly haven't been able to rein her in, so I don't know that you would have any influence there, but what's your position on that?
Well, the one meeting that she attended, I believe, was the one that I was responding to the budget when I was leader of the opposition, and she made sure to call me to say, I'll be there to support you. But no, that's an aside. Without being unkind, I don't support her not being there. And that's simply it. I feel that we have an obligation as elected representatives to do the work of the people, and some of that work sometimes might not be our strong point. You know, it's not everybody that can get up before a camera or get up in a public, get up on a public stage and speak and deliver, but show up at least. And so I feel that that is not a situation that I could support. I feel we need to be working for the people. And if you're not running again, that's fine too. But while you are in that position, you have an obligation, not only to the people of your constituency, but also to the people of the nation to show up. So I don't want to be unkind to Sister B, but that's not something that I could support.
We have to wrap up.
I just want 2 comments. 2 comments, right, Mr. Faber? One, let me just comment from a personal perspective. I think you're a great orator, and I just wanted to put that out there. Like you said, you spent a lot of time presenting the budget, but I admire the fact that you're able to recollect a lot of these things and speak from the top of your head. So that's one commendation from me to you. And secondly, I know you announced that you have a
newborn baby.
A newborn baby, right? So you announced that publicly at the during the budget debate, and so also I wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Notwithstanding everything that has been shown upon you for the past couple of years, I would like for you to take the opportunity to address our viewers, and perhaps what is it that you really want our general public to understand about you and the next steps in your career?
Well, I go back to yesterday when I was speaking to those young students. I had the opportunity to do this in my old Standard 6 classroom. This was Standard 4 now, but back then it was Standard 6. And I was reminiscing that it was in that room that I first chalked up in my mind that I would be Prime Minister of Belize one day. That would be my ambition. And ever since those days, my life has been about service. You know, there are lots of negatives that people can find. Of course, nobody is perfect. I'm not using that as an excuse. But ultimately, I live a life of service. I love helping. I love trying to make this country better. And so while there are missteps along the way, I want people to understand that none of this is ever intentional. I want to make sure that this country gets the best version of me. My party gets the best version of me. My constituents, who I love dearly, they have been my rock. They have loved me unconditionally. and I want to make sure that I'm always there for them for as long as they will have me. Because when they say I have to go, then I really got to go. They are the ones who make that determination. And lastly, for me, one of my strengths, and I thank you for your congratulations, Paul, is and I guess that's something that has been used to stir mud over time, the love that I have for my children. And yes, I do have a brand new bouncing baby boy. He's going to be 4 months, I think. He was born on January 14th. That's a new joy. I mean, the joy of fatherhood I know very well, but always welcoming a new child is a great event in life, and it has humbled me tremendously, and I look forward to creating the strongest of bonds with him and continue the bonds that I've developed with my other children, whom are doing very well. You know, if you look at my Facebook page, you will see me boasting about my son, my second son, Patrick Jr., who he sent me a copy of his Dean's List certificate. He's a sophomore at Paramount High School in California, in Long Beach, and I called him to ask him, so what does this mean? And because the certificate says that your GPA is about 3.75, but what is the actual GPA? He said that my GPA is 4.5. And I remember at SJC, we did have some years ago where you could get up to 4.5 because there's the A+ system. Then he proceeded to send me his report card with all A+. So I said I already made the post, so I can't boast any further. People might not forgive me. So, but he does great. My elder son, as you know, or you may not know, is also very talented. He's
a musician.
He's a musician.
Yeah.
He has quite a few songs that he's published.
He always tags us in them. He tags as much people as he could.
He capitalizes on his dad knowing a lot of people, and he makes sure that my friends are his friends. So I'm very proud of them.
Right, that's how you learn, right?
Yeah. Well,
but yes,
so Faber,
Honorable, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and best of luck with your future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we'll take the break. We will be back with the Rotary District. Stay with us.